friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here today to talk about the tools for My Apothecary. So this was a special request and I thought it was an interesting one. And I'm pretty sure I'll be forgetting some stuff, but I figure, hey, sounds like a good idea. I'll cover a few things. And really the thing is, it doesn't have to be all that involved. For me, it's just kind of adding things as I go and find out easier ways to do things or what things might make my life easier. But you don't have to start out with anything expensive, such as if you're making tinctures and whatnot, all you need is some jars. Like this one is an usnea tincture that's been sitting here for 2 years and I still haven't strained it off yet. And this is just a recycled jar. And this tincture right here, or extract, this is an oxymil of mullein. I'm just using a regular canning jar. I kind of got a cool looking lid on top, but you don't have to do that. This marshmallow root from my own garden is stored in a recycled green olive jar. I do use canning jars predominantly, but when you're starting off storing your herbs and your roots and more, or making your tinctures, you can start off with recycled jars. You can vacuum seal them using something like the chamber here that Patrick makes, and yes, he does sell, or using the Food Saver tops and a Food Saver machine or a brake leader pump. I've got all kinds of videos on this. I'll link to a couple down below, like how to use the chamber and just options for vacuum sealing in general. In most cases, if your herbs and your roots are fully dried, there's really no need to vacuum seal. I just always do when it's going back into long-term storage, because I don't know how long it's going to be back there, and vacuum sealing is going to help them stay fresher for a longer period of time. Now this one is vacuum sealed. This is lamb's ear, but these three here are not vacuum sealed because I'm working through them. I just grabbed a few random ones. This is calendula, dandelion flower, and camellia flowers. But I have tons of herbs like that I keep in my taller, narrow storage cabinet right out here in the hall that I'm using for medicinal purposes. Then I also have my tea herbs back here. These are the ones I most likely use for teas. And so none of those are vacuum sealed. It can be as simple as that. How involved you want to get when you're just starting out, just use what you have on hand. Now, some other things I did come to really like was the wooden tamper that Patrick made for me when I'm preserving the herbs from my garden. When I'm packing them in there and I want to get as much into a jar as possible to save space in the pantry, I'll take the tamper and just press them down in there and then just keep packing those herbs in there nice and tight. Now, of course, if you're dehydrating, you do need something to dehydrate with, but even that, when it's delicate herbs, I don't recommend doing that in your oven because it's almost impossible to get your oven cool at a cool enough temperature to dehydrate them without damaging them. But a lot of people, especially if you live in a dry climate, you can simply dry herbs the old-fashioned way by hanging them anywhere and just letting them air dry. And especially the more delicate ones, they'll dry pretty quickly like that. If you live in a humid climate, that might not work as well, but even some in a humid climate have found simply putting them in thin paper bags and putting them wherever they can get plenty of air does not only help prevent them from getting light exposure and dust, that does help them to dry without absorbing moisture from the air, which I thought was interesting. I haven't tried that because I do have dehydrators. In the summertime, I run my dehydrators completely off of solar power. In the wintertime, I can do a lot of dehydrating next to or on top of my wood stove, depending on what I'm drying. I try to do everything next to rather than on top because we're always doing something on top of the wood stove in the wintertime, and I don't like my rack taking up that much space, so I dry whatever I can on the two racks that Patrick has built for me right next to my wood stove. And I've dried all kinds of things. Like ginger is one of them. I have a jar, I didn't bring that in here, but I do have a jar of ginger I just sealed up. It was 3 pounds of organic ginger root I'd bought from Azure Standard and cut it up and dehydrated it. Just using my wood stove. So there's all kinds of ways that you can dehydrate without having to invest in a dehydrator or especially a freeze dryer, which a lot of people don't have the funds for something like that or the space. But I'll link to the video down below I did on various ways that you can dehydrate, where I try to cover all kinds of different methods you can use for dehydrating for those that are just getting started and they just can't afford to buy some fancy equipment for that. So then a couple other things is I have two different mortar and pestles, because I bought this one first, this marble one, and I got it from Amazon years ago. Now I use both of these. This one I use for really hard things, like when I'm wanting to break up things like a whole nutmeg or allspice for making teas. Then this is a good one. And then this is the one Patrick made for me that I use for everything else. It's not as hard, but you know, you can crush up coffee beans and stuff for making flavored extracts and more. This is great for that, or anything that I'm just trying to kind of grind into a powder. This works really good for that, and this is made out of a hardwood. A mortar and pestle is definitely a handy thing to have, you know, something you might want to look into. If I can still find this one, I'll link to it down below. Last I looked, they had it in several different colors, including a green, like my rolling pin back here, which they didn't have when I bought this. They just had this one, but it's okay. I really like it. Some other things for storing, like your infused oils or your tinctures and extracts, would just be recycled bottles like I have back here. This is a maple syrup bottle that's holding my joint and muscle rub oil. This is I got these at a garage sale. I got 3 of them. I think I paid 50 cents a piece for them. And they're recycled beer bottles, swing top. And this is my deep sleep and muscle relaxer extract. And I have one for pain. I have another one. The third one I store my antibiotic extract in. And then these are recycled Fever Tree bottles, which is a type of soda. Mostly they do like a tonic, but they also have like a ginger ale and a ginger beer. Neither one, which is alcoholic, but they think they also do like a root beer. I mean, they're all more natural. They're kind of expensive, but they're really tasty. But the main reason I bought them was to have these great bottles that I then bought corks to go into. And so this one is holding an infused oil that's specifically a skin healing oil, and this one is more for a healing up breaks, sprains, and more. So that's an arnica and comfrey infused oil. Now, since I use, for a lot of my homemade extracts, I use my homemade wine. I have several glass jugs. All of them are ones that were recycled. I never bought any of them brand new. They were recycled wine jugs. And you buy that cheap wine at the store, and it's like $12 for a whole gallon of it. And I've had friends donate those to me. Some I bought at garage sales. And I use those to make my wine in, my homemade wine in. And then use the airlock on top. So I need those. The airlocks are cheap, by the way. They're only a couple dollars a piece, and if you buy them in a set, you can save quite a bit of money. I bought a couple of sets of 3, so I have several of those. Sometimes I can have maybe 4 different wines or meads going back here, but even though we don't drink, I use those for quite a few different things. And I even have a video on the many uses of homemade wine. So even if you don't drink, you might want to watch that video to learn why it's a good idea to learn how to make it for yourself, especially if you're already growing grapes or blackberries or any kind of berry or even rhubarb. You can make wine or mead out of any of those. Then there are the cutting things. So I've got my Nakano knives, which I absolutely love. This one now is my favorite. This one they gifted to me. It is a very expensive knife, but it is the best. I love this one. I still really love the other ones that I got. Some of them I bought from them. Some of them they gifted to me. So I got the whole set of the Mito series with the olive wood handle. Really like these. And then I also bought some of their paring knives, a set of their paring knives. And I also bought, while I'm at it, though I wouldn't use this for preparation of my medicinal products, I did also buy their steak knives because I like their knives so much. So if you're interested in looking into those and you're thinking you might need some new knives, I'll link to them down below. I know it's not the most affordable thing for everyone. Just like I say, I made it through 57 years of my life without having any fancy knives. Just whatever I could get, that were either gifted to me or I found at garage sales. That's what I did. But I have to say, I'm really grateful to have my Nakano knife. Now, as far as cutting surfaces, so this would obviously be for when if I'm needing to cut up the herbs like the ginger, when I chop that up, and yes, I leave the skins on the ginger. I have I think it's maple, I don't know. It's the cutting board that Patrick made for me. Even though he made this was not made to be a cutting board. This though is made for all other food preparation. When I'm cutting though, this is what I use. But both of these get treated the same way. And so does any other wooden kitchen items, including the handles of my knives, the mortar and pestle, the tamper, anything else. And my favorite thing to use is coconut oil on that. So I use the refined coconut oil whenever I'm treating that. Usually what I do is I just put a little bit, I'll either melt it and put it on there. Sometimes if it's already warm enough in the kitchen, I can just rub it right in as is. In fact, let me get a little glob out like this. And then if it really needs a good coating, I do this quite often. But sometimes once a year, I'll go through and just give it a really good treatment. And in that case, I might put several coats on there and go put it next to the wood stove. So something I like to do during the wintertime when we have fires going. Putting it next to the heat will help those oils to absorb into the wood products, whatever they are. In fact, I do need to give this one a good treatment again. And then put it next to the wood stove, and once you see it's no longer looking shiny on top, I'll do another coat, especially anything that's brand new. And so I'll do that frequently with these, not every time I use them necessarily, but maybe every several uses. It's like anytime I make bread on this, because I have to really kind of scrub it down well, I definitely give it a good treatment right after that. And I do flip this over occasionally, so I'm doing using both sides. But coconut oil is my choice because coconut oil, especially if you get the refined, it's not going to go rancid like other oils. It also has natural antimicrobial properties that will help disinfect it to a certain degree, your boards. And so that's why I really prefer coconut oil for that. And then the other thing I use quite frequently for, like, let's say I'm making a tincture, or an infused oil, is once I put my herbs in there and I start adding the liquid, the oil, the whatever solvent I'm using, is chopsticks. I love having chopsticks on hand, and they're so cheap. I got bamboo ones, and then one of my subscribers sent me stainless steel, which, yes, when you're talking about ferments, honey, or anything, stainless steel is, as far as metal goes, is the safe metal to use. It just makes it easy to get down in there and stir things up and break things up. So having chopsticks on hand is great. And I really feel like there's probably more that I'm not thinking of, but just a few ideas. And don't feel like you got to run out and buy everything that everybody has for their apothecary. Just start simple. That's all you got to do. That's what I did. And then you just kind of find what works best for you, the easy way to do things. And though I love my dehydrators, my electric ones, especially since we live in a cool and very, very wet climate and we don't have fires going year round, I really depend on my electric dehydrators during the spring and summer when everything's coming in. If you're not growing your own herbs and you're purchasing them from like Frontier Co-op and Anthony's and Azure Standard, then you might not ever need to have a dehydrator. But if you're growing your own herbs and you're wanting to put them up, yes, I do highly recommend getting a dehydrator, or at least, especially if you live in a climate like ours. But if you live in a dry, warm climate, that may not be necessary. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it gave you a few ideas. And please share with us down below what are some of your favorite tools for your apothecary in the comments so people can learn from you as well. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.